Welcome back, my friends. Today we are going to talk about nutrition. So, when I was in chiropractic school, I'm learning all this really good information about what food can do to your body, what food in a positive way, in a negative way. I definitely have some different slogans that I've learned along the way that I think are pretty fun and try to share some of those throughout this talk. But when I was going through school, I knew that I really wanted to have a great system. And one of my top priorities was kind of think of the whole pay for it now or pay for it later. You always hear people say, well, eating healthy is expensive. And I just like to start to think about like health costs if you don't start to implement healthy eating routines. So that was something that I took on, and it was really important to me, and I'd like to share because I did have some obstacles along the way, and so there's some things that definitely I almost had to learn the hard way, and I'd like to kind of explain and just show you how I narrowed the path because I know that you probably do want to be able to switch to this type of diet, and it can almost feel overwhelming. So that's probably my first bit of information that I will share is don't get overwhelmed by the process. What I did is I really found out that I had to start one meal at a time, and just like anything that you work at, the more that you work at it, the better you'll get. And so I started one meal at a time, and basically built from there. Really, probably one of the more useful resources that I found was some recipes that fell in line with the way that I wanted to eat. And so there's two main techniques that I use with my eating. One is the paleo diet, and the other one is the zone diet. And so if you look at the zone diet, it really makes a lot of sense from basically what it says is that you want to have an equal amount of carbohydrate, fat, and protein in each meal. The paleo diet is going to look at your ingredients, what you use to cook with. So what I try to do is achieve a zone diet type of macronutrient or protein, fat, and protein combination with paleo ingredients. And so with that, you could look at there is really one of the first sayings here is shop the perimeter of the store. You want to look for things that were alive and well recently and use those as your main ingredients. And so shopping the store, usually that stuff is around the perimeter. The stuff in the middle with the long shelf life, it's probably packed full of preservatives. Typically, it's the cytoskeleton of what once was food. And unfortunately, there can be a lot of different types of inflammatory or things that don't quite mesh well with your gut lining and can cause irritation, leaky gut. So really looking at foods and why it's important to eat a good quality food and something that meshes well with your biochemistry is that food can lead to some of these different inflammatory conditions. And I'll do different talks about some of these other topics also, what oils to cook with, what oils to consume and how. That's a really good topic because your body does need different oils. Inflammation, what is an inflammatory type meal, how some of these oils are highly processed and inflammatory. And so really having a well-rounded understanding and then just really taking the practice and the time to just make this a part of your lifestyle is what's really going to be the most beneficial for the long run. So the website that I probably went to the most at the beginning, and this is not to endorse anything in particular, is thepaleomom.com. And make sure you put the word "the" in there because if you put Paleo Mom, it takes you to somebody selling a bunch of cookbooks. I haven't been to the site in a while, but you could simply look up recipes. And so what I would do is I would look up a meal that looked good, and I would start to cook with that. And the neat thing is you're going to get sides from other meals that you like, and you start to develop more of a routine and a way to be able to cook different foods that you like. But that's a great one there. And then really looking at the zone diet, maybe for further explanation. how to balance out what are called your macronutrients, your proteins, your carbohydrates, things like that. Look those up. The Zone Diet has plenty of ideas. I would just try to stick to paleo ingredients because they'll have things in there like bread, which I stay away from. I have gone gluten-free. That's paleo. You're not going to find gluten really in the recipes. And then Zone Diet has things like French fries and all sorts of different ways to get your carbohydrates. I do think that the ketogenic diet, if done properly, is actually a really good thing. Your body using fat as a fuel source. So there are a handful of good books out there. I know Dr. Mercola has a book for fat loss there, and some of the other doctors, Dr. Mark Hyman, they do a lot good with keto. A great book that I started with is Grain Brain by Dr. David Perlmutter. Very, very accomplished individual, has lots of good information in there, and really across the board. I try not to get too dogmatic or let myself be swayed by one person's opinion, but really the information that he provides in that book stands the test of time across different sources of information. It all comes together, and I would trust that information there. So some of the stores that do a better job, obviously Whole Foods has a lot of good ingredients or supplies, foods. I found Sprouts had been better with the prices, but you can still even find some of this stuff at Walmart. You'll find a gluten-free section at Walmart, and then really looking for gluten-free on the labels. It's a lot easier to eat gluten-free out in public now, and there's a lot more options for people because the science is really starting to uncover how devastating gluten is. I do a whole talk on the leaky gut. Definitely take a look at that one for more information, but these are some of the biggest things because food is going to be the building blocks that your body uses. So traditional trip to the store, what do I look at? What do I buy? I typically go with some Canyon bread, which is a brand of gluten-free bread. I've tried different ones. I find that one's better toasted, so you can make a lot of recipes there. Boar's Head has a lot of uncured meats, so that's a better brand of meat. Always find meats without preservatives. And some of these things that are a little bit more, I'm not going to say controversial, but you hear press on either side, maybe limit those things. And so then just find a wide array of vegetables, meats, and cook with a lot of these different things. And once again, go back to the recipes. Find things you like. Find spices you like. Have a large variety. Some of the things coming back to what I get from the store, some of the staples, I often use zucchini. So I'll chop it into little squares and fry the outside of that either in some butter, tallow, coconut oil, things like that. Things like Brussels sprouts, sweet potatoes are really good. Look for gluten-free forms of rice. Different varieties of rice are great. Different oats, so you got some of your different rolled oats, and you can find some of these different carbohydrate sources. Remember that the vegetables are a form of carbohydrate also, and so when I'm looking at fruits and vegetables, I try to really go for things that are lower in glycemic index. So you can look up a chart for glycemic index and you'll have plenty of information there. But this hopefully is starting to at least shape some structure for you. Outside of that, you could do a lot with frozen vegetables. I do a lot of cauliflower rice I'll buy, use that. You can get cauliflower pizzas, things of that nature. Cauliflower is a very versatile ingredient that you could use in a lot of different dishes, but you'd be surprised once you start going through some of these recipes and actually just getting practice with this, it will get a lot easier. And you'll find that's one of the things I really liked about that Paleo Mom website is that she explains a lot of this stuff as you're going. There's a book called, The Paleo Answer, I believe, by Dr. Loren Cordain. He was the, person that, I'm not going to call it invented the paleo diet. Paleo diet's all structured around what we would have had as food sources before bread came around. And even old bread, you could argue, wasn't as bad as what it is now, but they genetically modify it. Our own cells in our intestines, called dendritic cells, and some of the other immune modulating cells, they don't even recognize it as food, so they start to get irritated, and that's what can be the source of some of that leaky gut intestinal permeability and just irritation, inflammation in the body. So one of the other tips that'll hopefully be helpful is what I personally try to do is sit down maybe at the end of the day, Friday, if Thursday's better for you, start to look at what you might want to eat that weekend, and I make multiple meals. I'll get a little ingredient list, especially as you start off at the beginning. You'll develop different trends as you go. Go to the store, get the ingredients maybe on Saturday. Start by washing, prepping, cutting those ingredients on Saturday. Have everything kind of prepped, but don't get overwhelmed. And then if you have some time on Sunday, that's when I like to cook things up. And so that method, that technique has worked for me. I'll look at some of the different sales. That'll help me decide what I want to do as far as what foods I purchase. If something's on great sale, I'll be like, okay, well, let me find a recipe with that, and I'll look up paleo diet for that. If you have problem with arthritis or different autoimmune conditions, there's also something called AIP, which is Autoimmune Protocol Paleo Diet. And you can also find lots of recipes that revolve around that. And that's usually elimination of nightshades, which tends to be peppers, tomatoes, eggplant, some of those types of things. And some people's cellular structure through genetics just does not do well with that. And so it's best to avoid that, because it's the consequence you'll pay is in the the symptoms that you're going to have and how your body will function as you go. Really look around for the sales, like I said, and then there's a lot of opportunity. I don't know if I mentioned it before, to make things a little easier on yourself. So I usually like to get the pre-washed, boxed organic salad that can sub in for a bunch of different meals. You'll notice in some of my other meals, because I will put some recipes out there and whatnot, a lot of times I'll just do utility sides. So I'll either have a side of sweet potatoes, I'll have a side of zucchini, I'll maybe have some smoked salmon, things like that, all in separate containers. Then you can combine and mix up a little meal quickly. You'd be surprised how much relief you will get when you say, oh man, I'm short on time this morning, and you have a handful of things you can just throw into a container and be ready to take out the door. Some of the other things are some of the frozen vegetables are really good time savers, and you can find even some pre-chopped vegetables there and that are not frozen, but you're going to pay a little bit more, and so you just have to weigh those benefits. But if you watch the ads, if you kind of learn the stores, I did this with Sprouts. I could go in and find when grass-fed ground beef was on sale, salmon was on sale, usually once a month, organic eggs, and I would stock up a little bit more. I did end up going ahead and getting a deep freeze, so when some of these things are on sale, I can also vacuum seal and deep freeze. That's a big step that I made, but it is very important. I don't want to go broke trying to eat right, and so it does take some preparation, but quite honestly, it is one of the most important things that you can address. So hopefully this is helpful. If I think of anything else, maybe I'll do a part 2, but I think this was most of the stuff that I wanted to put out there. So let me know if you guys have any questions. I'll get back to them as soon as possible. I'm probably not the best about that, but I hope this helps you on your journey for better health, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.